Love podcasts, hate nonsense. It's the PoliticsJOE podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, yeah.
See, you wouldn't know. There's only 2 people back there, but that was enthusiasm.
Is Sean back there?
No.
Oh.
And he's been slacking recently. If anything,
Sean?
it's applause. I would say so, yeah.
On his applause?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were coming here. I was like, that's why we hired Ben. This is now Ben's role.
God, it's another Santina Dugmore double header.
Wow.
I think that's the last. Is that the last 3?
Huge for...
We did free speech, didn't we? We did question time debrief.
Yeah.
And now we're going behind the scenes with Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, behind the curtain.
Behind the curtain.
Behind the iron curtain, you might say.
Ed Campbell is still alive, I'm told. But the pictures of his night out back home looks pretty punchy.
Was that back home?
Yeah. That was
Didn't
back
realise.
home. Yeah.
He relaxes when he goes back home, doesn't he?
As opposed to me when I return home in a constant state.
Sorry about that. The pollen count's really high, isn't it?
It is. I've started my Claritin routine.
Have you?
Yeah, I need to stock up on the Alevia. Actually, I think I've got an Alevia in my bag. If you'd like one.
I don't like any. I don't like them drugs. I think they affect me.
They do make you drowsy.
Yeah.
I once had medical prescription antihistamines. I was really struggling, and I was with a guy who got them like the highest strength ones from his doctor, and he was like, "Do you want one? Be warned, it will make you drowsy."
Yeah.
And I thought, drowsy, I'll be fine. And within about 15, 20 minutes, I was out cold.
Really?
Asleep, yeah, in the middle of the day, yeah.
Well, that's useless, isn't it?
Punchy stuff. Yeah, well, I guess you can't sneeze if you're asleep. That's how it works.
Surely you can.
I think you probably can.
Surely you can.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't think I've ever sneezed in my sleep.
How would you know?
You'd assume it would wake you up.
Yeah, but people cough in their sleep, don't they?
They do. They do be doing that. Okay, we'll do Bernie. I feel like I just want to. That's the second time you've beaten up on that microphone.
Yeah, no, I'm not
this
looking
morning.
too good today.
I don't think that's true. Free speech episode. Audience feedback on the free speech episode, right? I've been getting cooked.
Yeah.
My takes have been getting.
They were dog shit.
Yeah. Well.
They suck.
Look. You can.
Oh, you should be allowed to say you want to burn down a mosque. Right.
Look, you can think that. You can think my take's poor. The audience can think my takes are poor. It's fine. And my commitment to free speech is such, Ava Santina,
Yeah.
that I am the person that approved all of those posts in the subreddit.
Yeah.
Complaining. That is how much I love free speech. That either makes me like a free speech advocate or a ginormous cuck. Possibly both.
Do they know why we have to approve the posts on the Reddit?
Just like some, for purposes of content moderation, making sure things stay on topic, I think.
It's not that at all, is it? Twice you heathens posted terrible, like photographs I would not want my parents seeing.
Yeah.
Don't know how you got them.
Yeah, that was bad.
I loved it. Hey, the Express wrote me up.
Did they? What did they say?
It's actually a really funny piece. So basically,
What, your question time appearance?
yeah. BBC Question Time guest says she can think of other ways to make money in saucy swipe. Yeah. Okay. And then I read that. I don't know if anyone can see. Can you see that?
We can put a screenshot in.
So, but what's funny about it is that the headline, you're like, oh God. And then you go in to read it and it's basically just talking about 2-child benefit cap.
Can I just say your microphone is drooping? I think you might need to tighten it up, to be honest with you.
All right.
Get some performance-enhancing drugs for the microphone.
Yeah, exactly.
Microphone
That's like Victoria Beckham. Do you know that video of her where she goes, this doesn't normally happen to me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. So that's the headline, and then it's just about the 2-child benefit cap, is it?
Yeah.
That feels like someone's put the...
Someone wrote the piece. And
yeah, someone's put a headline on that.
the sub-editor was like, nope, tits.
Sorry, what? It's about a woman under 35. It's saucy.
Yeah.
It's saucy, my friend. Did anyone say saucy? No, I'm saying it's saucy. That's why it's in inverted commas.
Yeah.
Good old Express. Yeah, I enjoyed the debrief with you on that one. Let's do Bernie. Let's talk about.
Let's lift the curtain.
Yeah, let's lift the curtain on Bernie. The curtain actually is just behind you. That was the curtain that he was on. He was across.
So I think it'd be interesting to hear from you. How did you prepare for that interview? Because just to be clear, Bernie has no interest in talking about UK politics
No,
in depth.
none. Right. How did I prepare for that? Well, I didn't prepare for it as much as I would like to, and
Is that because you got the day wrong?
yeah, I did think it was Friday, not Thursday. Initially, that's true. There was a bit of back and forth for a long time actually about locations, interviewers, etc., which kind of meant initially I wasn't expecting to be the person that interviewed him in the first instance.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about the interview in a more abstract way of, what should it cover and what should it be about, not these are the questions that I will ask him. I feel like I'm talking about it in an obtuse way. We were exploring the possibility of like a cultural figure interviewing him, basically, and we can make it match up with anyone's diary. So it
We
felt
could
to me
actually. No, we could. I took 7 phone calls on a beach,
really,
and it was matching up very well.
but
There was a no.
yeah.
It was
Look,
decided that you were actually the best option.
well, naturally, no. Look, I think look, I actually think I was in my head going, why don't people want to do this? Why don't people want to take this? And I actually think the kind of the involvement in political causes by people who like to present themselves as countercultural or subversive, I feel like leveraging politics for that end has kind of is cooling off from mainstream artists. Certainly not like smaller time. We can look at, like, for example, what Kneecap are doing, and you'd be like, they absolutely are not. They're leaning into politics right now, right? But they always have. But I'm talking about like bigger mainstream acts, and I think the Stormzy McDonald's campaign thing has basically, people have just gone, do you know what? I'm not going to risk putting my name or even walking into a room with a high profile political figure because I don't have the chops to talk about. It could be whether it's critiques of capitalism, whether it's Israel, Palestine, whatever it is, the negatives for my brand are too great. I'm not going to do it. You could look at that Grime for Corbyn thing that happened in 2017 and how put out a lot of those music artists were with what transpired, and the whole sort of mass mainstream media disgrace campaign against Corbyn and the way they felt discredited and let down by him. So I think that's I didn't have as much time to prepare for it as I probably
But staying
wanted
on that
to.
for 1 minute, it is very controlled what you hear out of artists
Yeah, massively.
around politics.
Yeah.
It's very controlled.
Well, you would know. You've brought the Kooks into this studio. Where I think there's been discussion of some other artists, haven't there as well, coming to talk to us.
You will have conversations before about what politics questions you'll be asking.
Yeah.
It is a very controlled line.
Yeah, I just when your public brand is such
Yeah.
that if you negatively impact people's perception of you by, I don't know, phrasing a question in the wrong way, I assume the judgment is, I guess it's just not worth the risk.
The nuance is actually, I think, very difficult for people who don't do politics all day, every day.
Yeah. It's difficult for me.
Yeah.
So I prepared for it. The thing, this will be a real curtain raiser. So I've interviewed him before, and in that first interview, on a personal level, actually, I watched that first one in preparation for the second one, and I think I did a better job in the second one because in that first one, I was kind of crowbarring or trying to force him into talking about things that he essentially didn't want to talk about. So, Starmer versus Corbyn in the Labour Party, the state of the Labour movement is the current Labour Party, left wing by an objective standard. And essentially he had this defense mechanism when every time you would set up a question by explaining some context and then posing a question, he'd be like, well, I don't know too much about UK politics, so I'll just talk about America. And obviously for a British audience, people want to hear his perspectives on British politics, and it's an easy get out for him to say, I'm not too across this, so I'm not going to comment on it. When that summer he was appearing at RMT meetings.
Oh yeah, he's
and
across it.
and giving speeches.
That was our first ever piece of content with him, was at an RMT rally, if you remember.
Yeah. And he, in contact with the unions over here, knows Jeremy Corbyn. So it doesn't really. He has a brother who stood for the Greens once upon a time. Like he knows about Britain, and obviously as well by dint of being like a leading political figure, and the politics of the UK not having a great deal of bearing, but having some bearing on America. He clearly knows more than he is prepared or wants to talk about.
Do you know where the proof of that is?
Where?
When he was talking about the UK-US trade deal.
Mm.
Because he started by being like, oh yeah, that. And then he was like, but I don't know the detail. It's like, well, you obviously do to make that sort of,
Yeah.
you know.
Do you know what was interesting? I was listening to JD Vance was being interviewed on, what's the guy? The guy's name is Ross, and then it begins with a D, and I don't know how to pronounce it. It's Douthet. I think it's like Douthet, or maybe Douthet.
Okay.
Might have an American inflection like that. I don't know. He's like the New York Times conservative guy. He like provides the right wing perspective in the MIT, and he got an hour with Vance in the Vatican and asked him about the trade deal. And Vance was just straight up was like, yeah, that trade deal is very good for us. Like we are getting access to their market for products that we just didn't have before. Like they don't perceive that as like almost like a mutually beneficial like agreement between the countries. They're essentially like, yeah, so we whacked tariffs up and they basically bent over backwards to give us what we want, and now we have a trade deal as a result of it, which I thought was quite funny. And Bernie, as you said in that answer, kind of indicated that the Americans feel like they've certainly got the better of us in that negotiation.
Well,
but yeah. So I was trying to. How did I change my approach? A lot of if I wanted to, for example, ask him about wealth taxes, I was cutting from my question, the potential question, like there's a live debate in the UK right now about whether we should tax wealth. I just said to him, do you support wealth taxes? Which then means he can answer in the abstract, but you're still getting his answer on the principle, right?
He was very progressive on wealth tax.
Yeah. And then other than that, how did I prepare? Put my headphones on and was just doing a lot of pacing.
Yeah, he looked like, do you know when like boxers are about to...
You said that to me. In the morning, I was walking around the office with my headphones on. You're like, you're about to have a fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the back room. Yeah, so that was good. He
Oh, he remembered Ollie. He did. Ollie, how have you been?
How's it going?
Yeah.
Yeah. Big fan of the channel. Big fan of the channel, I would say. Was very interested. He was like, you guys do this daily, he said. God, that must be very tiring.
His wife was fantastic.
Yeah, she's good value. Coughed a little bit.
Again. This is what it looks like to have private healthcare.
Maybe we should, maybe we should invest in some soundproofing in the studio, whereby there could be a space where like people could sit, and then if they spoke or coughed, it wouldn't be audible on the set. That's an idea for us to consider.
Well, I lived with a girl at uni once. This is when I got put into a house with 7 Swedish women. I was blonde at the time as well, so people used to talk to me in Swedish, and I'd be like, I don't.
Did you learn any Swedish during that time?
No. Anyway, one of the girls had a thing that you put on your face because she was a singer.
Right. Oh, what, the oxygen, like when you sleep?
No, it was like so she could sing in her room and it would like deafen the sound.
Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it didn't do it completely, but like she was like opera.
Which would be quite loud.
It was loud, yeah.
Was it kind of like a Hannibal Lecter type?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Interesting. I guess like screaming into a pillow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah.
Maybe we should get one of those.
So he was asking, he had a lot of, he was asking
about Starmer.
He was asking about Starmer, yeah. He was asking about how people feel about Starmer. He asked if the reason Starmer hasn't been on PoliticsJOE is because he's worried about being embarrassed, which was quite funny.
That was actually quite a crazy line.
Yeah.
Because he's giving away a lot there, right? Firstly, that he does, in fact, keep up with UK politics. that he understands that the leader of the Labour Party has perhaps not kept up with his left-wing ambition in government.
Yeah, maybe.
By the way, we told you all this like a year and a half ago, and people were all in the comments like, "Oh, why don't you give him a chance?" We told you about it.
Look, Ava, you've been vindicated on Starmer, and you'll see in about another year and a half's time that I'll be vindicated on free speech as well.
No.
They'll all come round. They'll all come round to my way
They
of
will
thinking.
not.
Don't you worry about it. No, you're
But
absolutely
people
right.
still comment on stuff being like, "This is what you voted for. This is what you." It's like,
Yeah.
we were reviled by the Labour Party before it was cool.
Yeah, just look. Yeah, if you think that we're like the mouthpiece of the Labour Party, just take it. Run your eyes across the channels and see which sort of prominent government figures are allowed to come on the channel, and you'll see. I don't think we're necessarily the propaganda arm for them. So yeah, he made a joke about that, and then at the end he said to me, he was actually come to the States much, and I was like, yeah, we did 2020, didn't do the last one, and I said, oh, I'm a little bit reticent to for us to start coming over now, because seeing even American political commentators and journalists getting detained at the border and interrogated for a few hours. And he just like deadpan immediately was like, what are you talking about? You get a scoop. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, no one's done a dispatch from El Salvador yet. Basically being like, they'll send you to the death prison, which was quite funny. But yeah, maybe we do a little stateside. I mean, have I mentioned the AOC DMs on the pod before?
Ollie just begging AOC to reply.
Yeah, so when 2019 we did that that super viral video, like shocking Brits with the cost of American healthcare, and it went absolutely. I'd done like 100 million views, and a lot of that was in America. It was Americans sharing it because when you say to someone, "Oh, it's $2,000 for an ambulance call out," and people's mouths hit the floor and are saying things like "shut the fridge," all the Americans were sharing it, being like, "This is how insane our healthcare system is when you present it to someone who doesn't have to pay those fees," right? And it went massive over there. Like Russell Crowe, all these actors sharing it, and she shared it, and she followed me on the back of that, which means I can send her DMs. So if you peruse the chat history, basically, I would say between every 12 to 18 months, I send her a message, basically being like,
please
notice me.
Yeah.
Would love to interview you on the channel. We can come to America, yada. And to be fair to her, she usually reads it quite quickly. Probably not her, actually. It's probably like a social media intern. But it gets read within about 5 minutes, and it's just air. It's just tumbleweed. So maybe he is our mechanism. Maybe we go over there, we say, Bernard. That's the thing as well. They say Bernard.
Do they?
Americans say Bernard, whereas we would say Bernard.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, they wouldn't say that, would they?
But you wouldn't call him Bernard Sanders, would you?
Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe that's what I should start calling him.
If you're an American, could you
Bernard,
let us know?
good to see you, brother.
Yeah.
Like Gernard, the fish.
Yeah, if you're an American, can you let... Should we ask an American?
Yeah, we can, yeah. Get a voice note. Say, can you send me a voice note saying the following word? Oh, okay.
Being aired. This is my AOC. You're on the podcast. Can you just tell us, how do you say Bernard?
Excuse
me? Can you say Bernard in your accent?
Bernard.
Oh.
You know Bernie, his full name?
Yeah, Bernie say.
Yeah, how would you...
Bernard.
That...
Say Bernard.
Right.
That's what I'm getting at.
That's what we're asking.
Would you say Bernard or would you say Bernard?
I think I've been in England too long.
Okay.
Ground down.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yeah. All right.
Thank you. Bye.
That was it. That was inconclusive. No, I think Bernard. Maybe I should start calling him Bernard. We've got, it'd be like, oh, that zany Englishman's back. Yeah, he was very interested as well. He was asking about Starmerism. He was asking about sort of how younger people perceive the Labour Party and what the sort of macro political headwinds are in the UK.
He asked about reform.
He did. Yeah, he did ask about reform. And basically whether or not the economic policies of the Labour Party would stave off that threat. To which I said, on current trends, no.
You got a very interesting line out of him, actually.
Did I? Half an hour conversation. I didn't think we got one.
He tried to convince the Democrats to put child benefit on the ticket,
Yeah.
and they said no.
Yeah.
And he was sort of in the context of what he had to say about right-wing parties like Reform. That was very interesting.
Yeah. I look, I didn't. Regular watchers of the channel will know that my critics would call it softball. I would call it conversational. But my interview approach and style typically is quite laconic, chatty, and I view it as my responsibility to get the guest to offer the sort of the purest expression of their ideas and views. So for some people that might mean confrontation, but rarely does it. And I think usually it's kind of like prodding, poking, and giving people the space to explain themselves. Reason being for that, before anyone is like, you're a journalist, you have to you should be accosting people. I think there's endless versions of that type of interview, like whether it's on broadcast, whether it's in print, and particularly for we really are lifting the curtain here, but from a kind of media market positioning and what is PoliticsJOE's USP. Do I think that we can do an Andrew Neil interview better than Andrew Neil can? Do I think that we can do a Nick Robinson interview better than Nick Robinson can? Or would it be better for us as a political outlet to offer a type of interview that is different to what our people that we would like to be competing with are offering? And when there are a million different shouty interviews, should we be shouting at them? So when I asked him once, when did you know that Joe Biden was unfit to run for the presidency? And rather than, because on the Today program, Robinson asked him that maybe 4 or 5 times, trying to get him to basically say when it was. And I actually thought his answer to that was really interesting, and I didn't ask it again because the first thing he said was it wasn't a question of Joe Biden's fitness. He span out of it and obviously didn't want to answer when or if he even thought that Biden was unfit to be president, because I think he feels a lot of personal loyalty to him, the closeness with which they worked on that administration's legislative agenda, and didn't go the whole hog, but certainly Bernie was pretty pleased with a lot of the legislation passed.
Is that really what you think it is? You don't think it's as simple as if he admits that Biden was unwell and it was untenable, then they de facto are saying that they were lying to the public?
So I haven't read the book yet, but Jake Tapper and I think it's Alex Thompson from Axios. Forgive me if I've got his name wrong. I've got a book out called Original Sin, and they've been doing the podcast circuit in America, and I've listened to a few of the interviews. And from what it sounds like, and this is I guess third-hand reported now at this point, that essentially it was a very limited number of people who were actually aware of the extent to which he was declining. And essentially it was Jill Biden, her personal aide, and really interesting, actually, there's a line, her chief of staff got seconded onto the presidential campaign, which is
Jill Biden's?
Yes. Yeah. The First Lady's chief of staff got involved in the actual presidential campaign.
Wow, okay.
And would kind of be offering the First Lady won't be very happy about this. Or no, the First Lady won't want that, talking about scheduling and things like that. And so from what I understand is that essentially some of Biden's aides and some of her aides essentially formed a very closed circle. And from what I can tell, and obviously this is only one account, that actually the extent to which the broader Democratic Party, even journalists, I mean, do you think that of all of the White House press corps, that they would be actively covering up the fact that if they knew that the president was unfit for office? That's like the scoop of the century. If you had that information, would you really not run it? Now, I guess the groupthink is, well, anything that harms Biden enhances Trump, and so it's your duty, citizen, to keep that information to yourself.
But is it also money? Because
Yeah,
they have like the corporate Democrat, like the European mind cannot conceive of, right?
yeah, the wealth. Yeah,
Or like, whose money was where and what was Trump going to do to the markets, send them into turmoil?
yeah. Look, you might be right. He might have just he might just not want to say, yeah, do you know what, actually I had some concerns about him in January of that year, because obviously that would be like,
State of
fucking
him.
hell, really?
But the state of him.
Biden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The poor man didn't know where he was.
Yeah, he really didn't, particularly in that debate. It was bad. But interestingly, Bernie then pivots in his answer and he goes, "It's not a question of fitness," which I initially was like, whoa, but he didn't mean to be president. He meant Biden's lack of fitness was not why we lost the election. He was basically he was trying to make the argument that it wasn't a hospital pass to Kamala Harris,
Yeah.
and she could have won, and that the blame for that should rest with her. Now, I disagree with him on that. I think you give someone 100 days. The presidential cycles run in more than 18-month long periods, right?
Sure.
Particularly, it's already very, very difficult for a vice president to run. You're talking like you have to redefine who you are outside of the administration that you've been vice president in, right? And Biden has to take 4 years, right? There's the Trump interregnum before he can come back. You're asking Kamala Harris to do that in 100 days to basically make the decision: do I own the legacy of this administration? Do I disregard it and say I'm going to do something different? I think that's an enormously difficult thing to do.
Do you? Because do you not also think that she just spent her entire time talking about like?
I think she was a terrible candidate.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong.
Okay.
No, what I'm saying is, even if she wasn't, and she was an incredibly gifted one, I still think it would be an uphill.
The brat
Battle.
thing. I honestly think that it's so haunting.
Yeah, I remember when it first started, and I think I said to you, "What is brat?" And you were like, "It's Bic lighter, no bra, white t-shirt." And I was like, "Yeah, that does not sound like Kamala Harris."
No.
And I would now add on to that, it's also like doing copious amounts of cocaine as well. I think that's quite brat. I think that's kind of what the album is saying, right?
I think you can do it without the coke.
Yeah,
I think that you can be just
optional.
drinking.
Yeah, okay. But again, would we describe Kamala Harris as a good time party girl? She when she was the fucking prosecutor in California, she locked up tons of people on weed charges. Like she's not like 24/7 365, you know?
They really overplayed as well. Like that like phone call she did where she was like, oh, it gives me the ick. I am telling you, start the marriages. You know what I'm talking about? And it was like, they really overplayed that. It was like, an election is not won on the gays. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, they were.
At some point, you're like, oh, economic policy. Also, like, okay, I went to Miami immediately when Trump was elected. You could not move for Trump voters because they're all in real estate down there, and they're all like, and it doesn't really work the same as it does over here, right? Over there, Americans are interested in one thing, and it is cash. Truly, every single gay that we met out there voted Republican in Miami. Obviously, it's a particular place, and I get that.
Yeah.
But if you remember that she ran her entire campaign on being LGBT.
Yeah, I think they also were really trying. They were trying to multiple times in that campaign. They tried to recreate that 2020. We did it, Joe. That phone call that went massively viral when they were talking. And there were a couple of times where they tried to recreate that moment, that media hit.
She went on Call Her Daddy.
Yeah, but again, if you go on Call Her Daddy and you don't talk about blowjobs, don't go on Call Her Daddy.
Yeah.
Do you know, like that podcast is like, it's enormously popular, and it's enormously popular because people are exceptionally frank. It's like ingrained in American female pop culture, and they also have like incredibly direct and honest conversations about sex.
Yeah.
It's the wrong placement unless you're going to go on there and talk about you and Doug's romantic life.
Yeah.
Don't go because you're basically trying to leverage the audience without meeting that audience where they are and giving them the thing they want. So it just looks cynical. It just looks cynical. Like, it's why, other end of the spectrum, Trump goes on Rogan and spends 5 minutes talking about Khabib Nurmagomedov, who is, by all accounts, certainly in the like greatest of all time conversation in MMA, this like absolutely insane grappler, so like hard as nails, and they talk about like how impressive he is for 5 minutes. Like that's going on Rogan. Like you're doing the bit.
Right.
It,
So what you wanted to hear about Kamala's sex life?
I don't want I don't want to hear about Kamala's sex life.
It was an odd placement, and she's a very good interviewer.
Yeah, she is. She's great.
What is
Alex
her name?
Cooper.
Alex Cooper.
Yeah.
She's an excellent interviewer.
Yeah.
But yeah, it didn't work.
Yeah, really good.
The niche that she's carved out, it did not work. It did not translate.
Yeah. So that was interesting from him.
Anne Applebaum the other week,
Mm.
she reckoned that gender critical swung the election. She reckoned that was the moral panic around it was so heated.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got a bit of gossip about that. I'll tell you after.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
Can't wait. Yeah, look, I thought, and it's gone back and forth because essentially it's become a proxy for, have the Democrats become too woke? Are they too focused on cultural issues, etc.? But there was a TV ad, I'm sure most of you heard of it, that the Republicans ran, and it was, she's for they, them, he is for you, which I think is like one of the most powerful bits of campaign literature I saw in the entire cycle. When the first time I saw it, I was like, oh fuck, that is like, that's wedge.
Well, the bar was fucking low, wasn't it? Because on the other side of it, you think you just fell out of a coconut tree and Kamala is brat. Like, so, I mean, do you know what I mean?
Oh, the coconut tree thing was quite funny, and quite good. But no, exactly. Now, actually, when I was on,
Thomas said something like that. Oh, you think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
we are unburdened by what has been,
Yeah.
aware of what will become. Sorry, excuse me.
Oh, hey, mullet's coming in nice.
Thank you.
I just got a profile shot of you there. Yeah.
They shot me in profile on LBC. You could really see it.
Mm.
But so when I was presenting on LBC, I was doing the overnights, which actually was really good for booking like active, like sitting American politicians, because on the West Coast, it's sort of late evening, getting towards the nighttime. So I interviewed like a few Congress people, retired senators, etc.
Congress people, grow up. You interviewed men.
Yeah, they were Congress.
Oh, were they? I was just shooting in the dark.
No, I was running through my head. I was like, were actually any of them women? And I don't think they were.
Well,
but again, commentators, strategists. We quite often do an hour on American politics, and when I would quite often put the TV ad to them and say, do you think that had much sway? And basically, depending on whether or not, if they had a horse in the race, that essentially if they were of a more progressive persuasion, they would say, I don't think that was very effective. And if they were of this more centrist Democrat persuasion of essentially, it's the economy stupid, the cost of living has gone up, we kept telling people that life was great, they would say, and yeah, we've lost our way and we've become obsessed with these issues of racial, social justice and have lost connection to working class people and the material conditions of their lives.
which is correct.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, I think so. Like,
you look at the people who are socially liberal, or you look at the people who are affected most by the economy, right? It's the people that the Democrats were targeting with all of the rhetoric. But they weren't doing anything to improve the material conditions of their lives.
Which is exactly the argument that Bernie is making when he says it's not about the fitness of Joe Biden. You mentioned child benefit. It's basically about working class issues. And he would then counter and add, it's about fighting for social justice, racial justice, climate justice, but that you cannot disentangle those things from an economic analysis. And unless you try, the stat is insane. The stat is insane. There are 3 billionaires whose combined personal wealth is equivalent of half of America's population.
Shut the fuck up.
50%, the bottom 50% of America, their total personal wealth is equivalent to the top 3 billionaires.
That's incredible, isn't it?
What?
That's just guys being dudes.
Yeah, just dudes rock.
When you hear that, it's so unethical to be a billionaire. It's so unethical. Oh, he's going to come out in defense of the billionaires. I cannot believe it.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Is there anything that you won't defend? Gee.
Well, is there anything on which you will not turn heel, Ollie Dugmore? No,
I think we should start doing a cultural figure and saying discuss.
Rose
West.
No, I have.
Rose West was a girl boss.
Yeah, chronically misunderstood. No,
I've see all that stuff about the guy in Liverpool,
the alleged Liverpool parade driver.
Yeah. Why did people keep mentioning he lived in a cul-de-sac?
I think the way in which he has been represented in the media has quite a lot to do with his skin tone.
Oh, God, we're saying big things on here today, aren't we?
Yeah,
we are.
I think it's like you don't have to reach too far for recent examples of people from ethnic minority backgrounds and the headlines that run against them. This guy, it's like, he was a company director. Isn't that shocking that a company director would do something like this? He lived on a cul-de-sac, as opposed to, we weren't planning to talk about this. You brought this up, so I don't have the examples here to hand. But, I
actually think that's very important. Genuinely. Like, don't get me wrong. I think it's a total madness that there's this misconception that they put out a statement saying it's a white man that did it, and everyone went, "Oh, it's not terrorism." In 2020, more white people were charged under the Terrorism Act than any person of color.
Yeah.
But I do think it's really important actually to mention that he's a company director, that he was financially stable, that this wasn't someone who was quote unquote on the edge, because far right terror, and we don't know if it is that yet, we actually have no idea, but that sort of thinking, that sort of terror, are people that you wouldn't typically associate.
Yeah.
Like Rilla Cabana was living in like that bedroom with mold everywhere and like making ricin underneath his bed. Like you were like, oh, yeah, fits,
Yeah, look, I think I agree. It's important, it's relevant, and it's interesting information. My point is more about the sort of the overarching framing that people position the story as. I agree. I would like to know that information. But if, for example, you're describing one person who's committed an atrocious act as, like a frenzied animalistic killer, and the other one you're like, he was a company director, and those are your two headlines.
Cul-de-sac, yeah.
So that's a bit of a problem for me.
Should we get back to Bernie? Sorry.
Yes, but I just would say you're right that senior people in the intelligence and police services say that, well, it's proven far right terrorism is the fastest growing in terms of the number of arrests that are being made, and it makes me question and think about the use of the word terrorist and what does it actually mean, because everyone knows it's Arafat, isn't it? One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. Terrorist is essentially a pejorative word you use politically to describe your enemies. What does the word actually mean? I would say use of violence for political ends probably is how I would define it. So, okay, if we accept that as the definition, and you have, I don't know, widespread race rioting, and so you crack down with the police, lock up a load of people and imprison them, is that not deploying violence for political ends? So but you wouldn't describe, or maybe you wouldn't describe the actions of the government as terrorist as that of a terrorist organisation, would you?
You're not going to talk me into that this morning.
So you
could also argue a lot of sexual assault is terrorism, because a lot of that is politically motivated, because some men who commit these sexual abuse incidents hate women. That is political.
Yeah. And so again, would you use that terminology in that instance? I think you could. Would you is another question, and so it kind of demonstrates, I think, the hollowness of it as a term. It is essentially an insult that people use to discredit their political opponents, I think.
Yeah. Can you be a terrorist if you live on a cul-de-sac? 0345.
Will we talk about Ipso? Will we talk about the polling?
Come back to it, can't we?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we'll come back to it. Because I'm sure people who followed the page have seen we've got like all this really super interesting polling coming out. We've done in collaboration with it, so you would have heard a podcast episode last week where they went deep on it, and we'll have a chat at some point this week about.
And we'll talk about Hamilton as well, because that's very interesting.
Women. The one was like, why? I think the thing we want to talk about really is like, why are men scared or less inclined now to try and interact romantically with women? I think
So interesting. And the more, if they vote for a right-wing party, they have a propensity to fear talking to women in real life, or believing that women, that what is it, 80% of women only fancy 20% of men.
Yeah.
Which is just not true. So interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it'll be. So I'm looking forward to talking about that. Okay, well maybe we'll round out. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to chat about in the Bernie interview that maybe we could cover, but yeah.
Well, do you know what? Why don't they watch the Bernie interview, and why don't you guys will put a little thing on the Reddit? You can post questions if we haven't answered something.
Yeah.
And we go again.
We could string out another episode about it. Yeah, we've got some other big hitters coming up as well, I think. What else should I signpost? Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to give any names away yet, but I've got some stuff I'm keen on in the pipeline. I'm cooking.
He's cooking.
I'm cooking. Yeah.
Importantly, not cooked.
No, not cooked. Absolutely not cooked. All right, should we leave it there? Should we park the bus there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Always a pleasure never a chore, Ava Santina.
You too, fella. You too.
Like, comment, subscribe, leave a review. You can ask questions in the subreddit if you like. Someone asked where my shoes are from.
Where are they from?
They're Keen.
They're nice, them, aren't they?
K-E-E-N.
Nice.
They're called Jasper Zionics.
Okay.
And it was nice because it was the first time someone's put something in there that wasn't Ollie's mental.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed it.
All right.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for listening.
See ya.